Life Audio.
Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I am your host, John Seidel. This is your home for real stories, radical vulnerability, and remarkable comebacks. In the end, this podcast is a place for the desperate, the downtrodden, the destitute, and especially the drunk. But it's also a place of hope and healing. I know that firsthand because I'm the Christian who became an alcoholic, not the other way around. Today, I've found sobriety after decades of struggling. But more importantly than finding sobriety, I found Jesus. My prayer is that as I interview people just like you and just like me, along with professionals in the fields of trauma, faith, and addiction recovery, you will find the peace that is available to you through Christ on the other side of whatever you're going through and whatever addiction that might be. Because let's face it, we're all addicted to something. So welcome. Let's get radically vulnerable as we explore what it looks like to be on this journey of messy sanctification. We'll be right back after this. How long did you ignore that tension that was inside of you that said, hey, the way you're treating alcohol is not healthy? I know that I ignored it for years and years and years, even before I got to what I call the severe slide period in my relationship with alcohol, which was the year and a half leading up to my rock bottom moment. Julie, who you are about to meet, is one of those people who had a similar experience where she ignored the inner tension that she was feeling for a very long time. Here's what's great about Julie. Julie is a longtime listener of the show. And she is even in fact, like she'll mention this, but she has a spreadsheet of every episode of this show where she writes down like the nuggets that she gleans from each episode. And I met Julie actually before I started the show, though. I met her years ago where I was speaking at an event. And I had actually just signed, and we'll get into more details, but I had just signed the contract to write Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic. And I think Julie was part of the audience that I first revealed kind of this to. And she came up to me afterwards and she's like, I just had to talk to you about this. And what's interesting is you would think maybe even that's the moment that she decided that her relationship with alcohol needed to be changed. Maybe that was one of the moments. But even from then on, it's not like she gave up drinking at that point. And so she's going to detail her story. She's going to talk about what it looks like and why she finally decided enough is enough. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who relate to her story. And most importantly, when she talks about the why, she talks about exploring our stories. And this is something we're going to continue to talk about on this podcast, but exploring our stories and looking into our past for why we do what we do. And then inviting Jesus into healing those areas. So I'm really, really excited for you to meet Julie, for us to talk together. She is a brilliant businesswoman, an entrepreneur, someone who is, and she'll talk about the fact that she's so high functioning and actually how that really hurt, in a sense, her drinking journey. So without further ado, I'm not going to talk about the book. I'm not going to tell you to go to christianalcoholic.com and pre-order the book. But I want you to just meet and listen and soak in what Julie talks about. So without further ado, Julie Holly. Julie, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We've already had tears before we hit record. There's already been, 15 minutes worth of great material. I should have hit record just, before. But thank you. Thank you for joining the show.
John, it is such a privilege to be here. And I want you to know how powerful your content has been and how healing it's been for my journey and how God has used your work over the last year in my own life. And it's powerful. So thank you. And I'm grateful for all the guests.
Well, as we're recording this today, I think I told you earlier, because you said some other kind words, that like I needed that, right? Because this journey, and I've been open to this, and you're an ardent, and this is, by the way, I a lot of times I'll end the show with like, if you want to be on the show, like go fill out a form, whatnot, let me know. Julie's a longtime listener, like she's on the show. Like you too can be on the show, and it's real. Like I met a guy that I had coffee with yesterday, who I met on Instagram, and we've been talking about this. He's going to come on the show, so it's not just like blowing smoke. But anyways, you said some kind words because I'm very open that this journey, as I've said on many episodes, is not one of just roses and butterflies and rainbows and, periwinkles. It's like there are times when you are forced to be obedient to God that it is not easy. And in fact, dare I say, many times. And you've experienced this in your life too, have you not?
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so.
We'll
I think if we're all honest, we all know the obedience. John, is it really the obedience or is it the trust? Right. I remember singing Trust and Obey as a kid, for there is no other way, right, to be happy. And so it's like the obedience part might actually be easier for me. It's the first step of trusting that God's got my best at heart and he's already got everything taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a good point. And that's why I think, even in the book, I talk about that the first really step in obedience is you have to trust him, right? And so like obedience breeds trust, or obedience breeds trust, trust breeds obedience. It's like this little symbiotic relationship. And so, yes. So Julie, before we get into your story, which I'm so excited about because I think it is so real, it's so good. I think it's where a lot of people might find themselves. And it's a good reminder that not everyone who realizes they need to change their relationship with alcohol looks a certain way. And so I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, kind of paint a picture. Who are you? What do you do? You're out there in Idaho, which who knows anyone who lives in Idaho? I guess everyone listening to the show now does. But kind of paint this picture of who you are and what you do.
I do a lot of really cool things. And one of the coolest things about my entire life is this willingness to trust God and to trust God into unknown situations and to not stay trapped in one situation. So what I mean by that is that a lot of times, particularly when we're in adulthood, we have a career. And that's the role. That's what we have. That's who we are. It defines us. Over my life, I've worn a lot of different hats, and it's been really awesome to allow myself to iterate and adapt. So I was a public school teacher. I'm a high performer. I am a high performer, high achiever, graduated early, started teaching at age 22. And so yay. And then I went into real estate sales, and then I went back into education, and then I went into commercial real estate investing. So I'm a podcaster, I'm a coach. So when we look at roles and responsibilities, I've worn a lot of different hats that have allowed me to see people in so many different ways. And as we'll see, even through the story of my sobriety, that all of those roles were actually chasing after something. Everything is anchored in a root story, and it's very fascinating. I think it's important to know also, I grew up in a great home. So everyone, we can check that. A lot of us can say, like, I grew up in a great home. So part of my work was difficult because I didn't want to say anything ill about anyone. But that's part of how I found my freedom, is discovering and being honest with my story.
Yes.
I am the first person in my family to be divorced in my family line. And it took a lot of courage. So I was a fantastic checklist Christian. I love the episode you had, and I listened to it recently, and it was talking about how a lot of church and sterilized Christianity is about behavioral modification.
Yeah.
And it resonated so deep in my heart. It gave me words for things that I needed, because it was true. And I checked all the boxes. I didn't party. I didn't do any of those things that everyone else was doing. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't rebellious on the outside. But the reality was I was deeply rebellious in my heart. And so I could be sitting there, with my mom, and I could be in trouble for being 10 minutes late. And in my heart, I am throwing daggers and just being rebellious. But my outward appearance did not present that way. And I was always like, well, I don't want to screw my life up. Like, if I do that, I'm going to end up in trouble and such. So those are interesting elements of kind of who I am. And I think one thing I want to give you give the listeners is that out of all the episodes I've listened to so far, and there are going to be so many more before this episode goes live, but this is the first episode I think that I know of that will be out there that is catching somebody in this part of the journey. So many of the amazing guests are like very deep in their journeys, and they've explored it really thoroughly. And I've been on this journey, and I can see I've been on this journey for about 5 years. But 2025 is the year that I actually said no more. And this is a year I drew the line in the sand. And I said, I don't want to wake up at midnight. I don't want to wake up at any point and be wrestling with God over how much I've been consuming. And I don't want my health to deteriorate because of how I'm consuming. I'm high functioning. So there is I could do it. I mean, that's the beauty of high performers. Lisa did it. So many guests are high performers who've done that. I can do that. I can pull it off, but that's not what God wanted. And so as we're recording this in the 9th month of 2025, this has been a very different year for me. And I hope that this is really, I hope that this is encouraging to listeners who are maybe at that same point of having those conversations with God and trying to figure out what is my relationship, and is this healthy? Is this serving me? What is the cost of it?
Yeah. Oh boy, we're going to go there. So by the way, Julie mentioned Lisa. You can go back and listen to 2 episodes with Lisa Stanton, who, PhD Dr. Lisa Stanton, right? Everything was perfect in her life, but it really wasn't, right? And I think you're right. High functioning people, I think especially, have a propensity to succumb to a form of the lies from alcohol that are because you're drinking, or because the results of your drinking don't look like, homeless under the bridge, because you would never be that, right? You would never allow yourself to be that, right? And because your brain is going a million miles a minute, right? It's this new idea and this new idea and this new thing. We were talking a little bit on, it's I got to do this on social media and this, right? And you're I deserve to shut that off, right? And so I think, high functioning people, especially that maybe can succumb to the comparison game of, well, at least I'm not doing that, or I don't look like that even more.
I so did that, John. And even when I spoke, maybe 2-3 years ago, I spoke with a good friend of mine who I mountain bike with, who started his mountain biking journey as part of his sober journey. and it was a way to do something healthy that was productive and such. He built a bunch of trails, and it's just amazing. I actually called him up, and I thought, and I was like, I don't know if I just want to explore this conversation, and I feel safe with you, like asking you, and you're open about your journey. And, the people would offer him a beer after a bike ride, and he'd be like, you don't want to meet that guy. He's funny about it. It was like, he's so clear about it. And in that conversation, I ended up feeling like, oh, I guess I'm okay. And no harm to him. It was, are you ready to receive the truth? Are you ready to really see yourself for where you are and what you're doing? And apparently I wasn't, because I was still doing the whole comparison game. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not passed out. I'm not, delinquent on things. I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. I guess I'm okay.
Yep.
But you broke it down. When I met you in June of 2024 at an event I wasn't supposed to be at.
That's where I want to start this. So yes, I'm glad you're going there.
Okay. When I met you there, you were just working on, or it was still like Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic. You weren't even certain that was what the Nate title was going to be. It was like so wet cement. I'm not supposed to be at this event. And I have a good friend, she's going, and I'm like, I have like 5 books in me. I'm going to go. And then you're there speaking, and I am like, Hawk, like, I have to go talk to you. And then selfishly, I'm like, I have to have John on my podcast. Like, that has to happen. And what I heard that was so different, John, was, wait, alcoholic isn't a thing. Like, oh, this is alcohol use disorder. Oh, wait, there's this spectrum. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, this is more like understanding a gradient. And I could start to see myself in the gradient for the very first time. Meanwhile, I think I had like the night before, like 3 glasses of wine and 2 cocktails. I don't know. Like, and I thought I was fine. Like, I legit thought I was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is encouraging on a lot of levels. So let's go back there, because I want to go back to that. Let's start the story there. So you and I meet. I'm speaking at an event. It's to help people write books, like to get their stories out there, and if they have books inside of them. And so I have some friends who run this like book writing boot camp, and they invited me to speak. I show up. It's like a Saturday afternoon or something, I think. And I had actually I had just recently, I think, signed the contract to write the book, to write Confessions. And this wasn't like a Christian event. I mean, I'm a Christian. My friends are Christians. You're a Christian. But it's like, let's be honest. I saw some of the people there. I'm like, not everyone's a Christian, right? Like,
yeah, it wasn't even promoted as a Christian air quote event. It was just.
But I don't even know how I brought it up. I think I was like, and actually, I just signed a contract. I don't know. It was something about the book writing process, and here's what's interesting. There was 2 main people that came up to me afterwards. You and another person. That other person is someone who gave me, who would later on give me some really critical feedback. Not critical as in important, but critical as in like arrows, because of the way I started talking about sobriety and connecting it to faith and whatnot. So that was interesting. And then there was you. And so tell me what prompted you to come up to me, because even after that conversation, I think, like, it wasn't like you had that conversation with me, you started seeing yourself, and then like you never drank again, right? You just talked about it. Like, you just really, this year is where you've kind of gotten to that point. So walk me through, you come up to me that event, why, and then where did you go? Like, what happened with your story?
All right. So actually, to get to the point of why I walked up to you at that event, actually, we have to go back. and look at what is a journey in the relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason why all the other people there didn't come up and talk to you about this, and why it didn't spark in their life the way it did for me. I mean, it was like flint and steel, like poof, like the little fire just combusted immediately.
Yeah.
I grew up in a dry home, and, it was like my dad would work with people from wineries. I grew up in California. He was a real estate agent. They would give him bottles of fine wine and stuff, and they would just got stuck in the cupboard. And later as an adult, I'm like, that is just travesty. That is so mean. I cannot even believe they are doing that. I want to go raid all these bottles of wine.
Rescue the wine.
Yeah. And I had this idea about you're an alcoholic or not. And so my relationship with alcohol, even from all those ages, like watching my brothers my parents let them try some whiskey one time, and they're all like, oh, that's disgusting. And I'm the youngest one looking at them like, oh, I'll never do that. That's gross. And so it's interesting when you look at when I look back at how alcohol came into my life. And so after my divorce, I didn't drink until I was 24. That's the first time I had my first any of alcohol. And I had left checklist Christianity. I had gotten divorced. I was suicidal with a smile. I left an abusive situation, and I had a conversation with God. And I'm like, I believe you have more for me. I think you have more for my life. And so I'm going to choose you over what anyone else is going to say. And I know that divorce is not what you want, but my two options in my mind are not being present on earth and being present with you, or divorce. And so making that first really bold step to walk away from checklist Christianity. And I'm very clear about just checking the boxes. And I loved God. I've always loved God, but just going through the motions of and not really living in that trust and that deep obedience. So I try my first cider at 24. I'm freaked out that I'm going to get drunk. My friends who are married, they're like, you'll be fine. You're fine. If you need any support, we're here. It's good. They're kind of it's a freaking cider. It's not the end of the world. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I drink this, I'm going to end up in rehab, and so when you put that kind of pressure on things, once you break that seal, it's kind of oh my gosh, this isn't the crazy thing I thought it was.
Right.
And it never was. And then I was around a lot of very healthy Christians who drank. And I'm like, thank God. And that inner rebel right there is kind of oh, thank God. Thank God that we're not freaked out and we're not being rigid, legalistic. This is how you have to do it. And it felt free. And it felt like we weren't trying to pit things unnecessarily against each other. Okay, we're not just trying to, put a bunch of rules into your life. And so seeing the healthy Christians around me and, having mimosas at brunch at somebody's house it was this feels healthy. This feels good. And I have an ego and I have a lot of elitism in me. And that's just reality.
Yep.
And so I'm I am a classy person who knows how to not be run by rules. I don't have to have this checklist anymore. Then, so many other awesome guests have pointed out, mommy wine culture, drink at 5, it was never out of control until everything started crashing. My husband was going through depression, and he went through a long time of depression. I felt alone. We lost babies. We lost my dad. We lost just so many tensions in life. And what did alcohol do for me? It brought belonging. It brought camaraderie. It brought people together in really healthy ways.
Yeah.
And so when I was teaching, it was oh, great, happy hour with the teachers. I belong. This whole narrative of belonging is what this all comes down to. And so when I met you at that event, I had been wrestling for a few years. You can drink wine.
That's interesting. A few years.
Yeah, a few years.
And I think that's important to point out, which let me say this, though, real quickly, is I think there's some of the things you mentioned, and I would say, and I think you would say, there are people who can stay there. They can stay in the world, not necessarily like I'm going to find my belonging in the culture, right? I think you noticed that started to be unhealthy, but who can just be like, you know what, maybe we have a mimosa or two at brunch and that's fine, right? And so I don't want people to be like, oh, anyone who no. I'm not saying that. Julie's not saying that. You can
Definitely not saying that.
Her and I could not, right? And I think if you're really listening to this podcast and you're interested in it, you probably can't either. Right. But I love the idea of like wrestling for years, because I think I wrestled for years as well, even before it got to the point of like so out of hand. And that's where I think the spectrum is so important and helpful. Right. If I would have realized, hey, I'm over here on the spectrum, right, where I'm starting to wrestle and starting like I don't have to get all the way to this point on the spectrum to realize it's a problem, right? I can be like, oh my gosh, I'm over here, I'm wrestling with it. That means I'm on the spectrum and I need to take notice, right? And I think there's probably a lot of other people who are listening who are like, man, yeah, that's me a couple of years. So anyways, I just thought, I just wanted to put that out. I thought that was interesting. We'll be right back after this.
That's one of the things that I love about, I think, people who really, truly have a healthy relationship with alcohol is that I don't care if somebody drinks or doesn't drink. And part of that juxtaposition of growing up in a sober home, and I never saw anybody drinking, except my grandpa would, but he was very classy, extremely successful. He'd have a small glass of wine. He'd sit down at 5 o'clock, have his glass of wine, and watch the evening news. And if I were in town visiting, all the grandkids would come by, Gramps, can we have a sip? And he'd let us have a sip, and it was fine. And so, like, aside from him, I didn't have any other relationship with alcohol. But I was told this story. You can't cause another brother or sister to stumble. And so it's like, oh, the burden of everybody else is on me. Right. Like, oh gosh. And put that onto a high performer. Like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, I'm going to take that to heart. And then I was involved in ministries where it's like, you cannot drink. Can't drink in public. Don't drink at home.
Right.
And so there's always this pressure around it that to me felt very unnecessary. I have 2 teenagers now, but their entire life we drank around them. And we're like, we want you to see healthy relationships with alcohol. Then they get to see mom with an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And there's nothing like tucking your daughter into bed, and she's like, ugh, I hate the smell of wine breath. I'm like, and I wasn't overdoing it at that point, although I'm saying that maybe it was. But, it's like things like that where God's trying to get you, just like those little tiny things.
That's a story in the book where I'm tucking my daughter in and she goes, Daddy, did you have your bourbon? And I'm like, oh my God, like literally I was tucking her in.
Like they know.
Yeah.
They know. And God just like speaks through the children. And I'm like, oh, I just had a glass of wine. It, no big deal. Trying to have this whole like healthy outlook and everything. But we were raising kids away from family. I no longer felt like I belonged in the teaching community that I was, where I was teaching and such. I'm glossing over a lot of big things, but it's just interesting when you don't know why you're drinking, you might drink more is what I found. And so I drank more and more and more. And then we got into cocktails, and our marriage was in a really bad situation. And prior to 2020, in 2019, New Year's Eve, we got away from our kids for the first time for an evening in years. And so we go away and we find this very classy bar, because remember, we're classy, not trashy. We're going to be in the classy place. And so we're in this classy bar in this nice booth, and we're like, hey, let's have a theme. Let's have a theme for this evening, which is fun, right? And so we're like, Prohibition era. We're going into 2020. Like, let's only drink Prohibition era cocktails. Hence, we went full throttle into cocktail mode. My husband becomes like obsessed with craft cocktails and making his own simple syrups, and I'm the happy guinea pig. And in a time when our marriage is completely strained and life feels like a bunch of pressure that's uncomfortable, I was like, this connects us. Cocktails and conversations. That's what we called it. And we could sit, and he would sit there and be the bartender. I would sit at our little tiny island, and, we would actually talk. And so it's interesting because the very thing that was destroying me was also something that was bringing us together. And
isn't that just like the enemy, right? Like,
yeah.
I think his most devious lies, his most devious tricks are things that have truth in them, right? And so is it wrong for you to want that connection with your husband? Absolutely not. Is it great in some instance that you're finding that? Yes. But when you're doing it through a means that is slowly destroying you and you're wrestling with that, right? It's like the devil's like, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay.
It's okay. It's okay that you're pouring yourself just like, a tiny bit of white wine and going out to your detached studio. It's like, it's crazy how sneaky you can become. And it's like, oh, wow. So I'm taking wine out to my office because I've had an office on our property. And I just like come in and be like, oh, I'm just going to have a celebratory or a cheer me up, pick me up, little bit of wine. My husband only recently is really understanding how much. He's like, how much, like, he did not understand. I mean, we're having very honest conversations about how much I was drinking, and wine is very easy. One of your guests talked about that with the bottle breakdown. I think it was Jen, and she's like, just pour a little bit, drink it. Oh, just a little bit more. Oh, the bottle's almost done. Like, I might as well finish it off. Like, and when did you start drinking that bottle? Was that in like 3 p.m? Like, it's embarrassing. And so there's been like my ego I've had to grow so much humility just to even have this honest conversation with myself, with God, and here with you. But the interesting thing is like it can bring you together, but it destroys. I learned how to make the cocktails, and that's really where it got bad.
Okay. So let's pause there. By the way, I think, you're talking about I'm just going to pour a little bit. I remember like one of the justifications, and I heard Matt Chandler, who wrote an endorsement for the book recently, say this. He was like, basically he was like, hey, I think a good general rule is to draw the line at 2, right? 1 is fine. 2 is okay. But when you go to 3, like maybe just check your heart, right? And I remember thinking, if I were back 3 years ago and I heard that, I would have used that as such justification, not to stop drinking, but to drink as much as I want. Because guess what? I get to decide how much a glass is, right? So if I have a sifter and that's this big, I can pour myself. I can pour myself 2 of those and I'm fine. Well, yeah, I'm going to pour them to the top, right? But he said 2 is fine. So I'm not going to do 3. I'm going to do 2 of those. Meanwhile, 2 of those is a quote unquote normal person's like 6, right? But I'm like, no, that's fine. That's fine. I'm okay. It's like my sinful heart wants what my sinful heart gets what my sinful heart wants, right? And so like my mind went there as soon as you're. I just poured myself a little when I went out to work, and it's like, yeah, because your little is whatever you decide it to be,
Well, the justification with the little is interesting because it's like, well, I just had this much, and it's like minding your pennies over dollars, right? It's like, oh, it's just this much. I'm just going to have this much. I'm just going to have this much. I'm just going to have this much. And pretty soon, this much is a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you justify it, maybe not even well, I just had this tiny bit. Like, it's no different than snacking on, chips and crackers and everything. It's like, oh, yeah. I'm just snacking. I'm like, it's just a little bit. It's just in the passing. It's no big deal. And like,
exactly.
And then that numbing part of like saying, this isn't really a big deal. It's no big. It's just a little. It's no big deal. And then that numbs, and it just no big deal. You've talked about it. Other people have. It's like that no big deal compounds further. And it's like that no big deal is now a huge big deal, a very big deal.
Absolutely. Okay. So you're going through 1920. you now start to learn how to make the cocktails, and what happens?
Yeah. So I started learning. I didn't learn to make the cocktails really until like late 2022, 23, probably 2023. And when I learned how to make the cocktails, then it can be like, I can be the fun one too. And now I can justify my drinking because I did something nice. I made myself a drink and I made one for you because I'm so nice.
Right.
Let me take you down with me.
Misery loves company.
Right? It's like, this is great. Yes, there's a Luxardo cherry in there. I mean, yeah. You want a Vieux Carré? I got you covered. Like, we knew all the fancy cocktails and had all the accoutrements for it. So it was like, I could make them also. And they were delicious. And they were so delicious. Still, I haven't had one forever. I'm like, guarantee still, we were talking about this, my husband and I, the other day. I'm like, if I had a French 75 right now, I wonder if I'd still like it. I'm like, yep, I'm certain I would still like it. I am certain.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, now it's just the consumption. So and I think this is where the heart of things is really going to be good, John, is that I told you off air, right? Last fall, like almost a year ago, my husband was traveling. You and I were recording a podcast. My power went out, which power goes out. That's a thing, but it's never gone out like this in our remote North Idaho town and where we live. I jump through all these hoops, drive an hour and a half with teenagers, figure out how to get to that recording with you. We have that recording. I was so hungry for an answer. I had tried so many different ways to solve the problem. I am a high performer. I can solve this. I can fix this. I launch a junior robotics team and take them halfway across the country to the world championship their first year. Like, I do epic things. I'm awesome. Why can I not get a grip on this? And the fact that I couldn't was starting to scare me. And so that impetus to have that conversation with you, it was really an inner drive of like, John knows stuff that I don't know, and I don't know anyone else that is talking about this in the same way and through the lens of faith, and not having it as condemnation and criticism, but just ownership and agency and dependence on God. So as we are on that same weekend, my husband was traveling, the power goes out, I hustle for that recording, and our QuickBooks account got hacked and people stole a chunk of money. And so I'm just like, everything's coming down. 2 months later, I find out that I have a business partner that had been embezzling, and we have millions of investor capital at play. And all of this is unraveling. I host my own event each year at a resort, and there were some challenges and complications with that. And so all of these things in our marriage is still like, we're working on it, but it is hard, right? And so it was just like, life was hard and I was drinking so much. And God is so good. God is so good that he put one of my friends at church, and we're just casually talking. And she's like, have you tried hormone replacement therapy? I'm like, what? So stay with me, y'all. I promise you this lands. And so we're of a certain age, and I'm like, tell me more. She's telling me how great she feels. And I'm like, well, maybe that's part of my solution. Maybe I am not managing. And she gives me the name, and you have to have a contact, and you really do have to have like the insider knowledge to get into this doctor. Okay. And so I get into the doctor.
Because of course,
but I know I have,
because you're a high performer. You're like, you give me a secret password that I have to figure out to get into this doctor. I'm going to figure it out.
I'm going to crack the code.
Right.
And this is God. God put people in my life along the way, from my daughter saying, wine breath on your mouth, Mom. And to meeting you, to having this conversation, and there's one other critical person, but I go to the doctor. I don't go to doctors. My dad dropped dead after having a physical and was in perfect health. And my family, we just don't go to doctors. We just never have. And so for me to go to a doctor is like a big deal. So I go to a doctor, make this appointment. I go there and I'm like, I feel terrible. I'm going to fill out all this paperwork very honestly. I want answers in my life. I want to feel great. And I got to give her all the right information. So if you go to a physician, they have you fill out a lot of paperwork. And it was different than a lot of paperwork I'd filled out since having babies and such. And I had to fill out how much I was drinking. I had to see that number on paper. I didn't know how much I was drinking. I knew I was losing my marbles. I knew I was dysregulated. I knew I wasn't managing stress well. I knew I wasn't showing up as the wife, as the mom, and I to just see my life is crumbling. It hasn't broken down, but it is fast tracking itself to full breakdown mode.
Yeah.
And so I answer this question honestly. And I realized that I'm easily having, at minimum 3 drinks a day. And again, what you say all the time about this isn't about the quantity, it's about what it's representing in your life.
Right.
That's how much I was trying to run from everything. Let me just bury myself. Let me numb myself. Let me self-soothe. This is self-care. And that self-care masquerades and destroys you. And that's really, it's like, well, this makes me feel like I belong. And like so many others, this is my friend. My friend is there and my friend listens to me. My friend never leaves me. My friend doesn't judge me. My friend doesn't backtalk or make, throw daggers like teenagers. Finally, it's all, I should just get a puppy, but I chose alcohol. But having that, so I'm meeting with the doctor. She looks at that, and she's a woman of faith as well. And my husband, we love each other as much as our marriage was struggling. We love each other. We fight for our marriage, right? So he's at this appointment with me because I'm like, always bring extra ears. Like, I want you to be part of this journey. And he did too. So we're sitting there having this conversation and she gets to the part of looking at my alcohol. It's kind of like, so you're stressed, huh? Really? You're not sleeping well, huh? And she did the best thing a physician could ever have done. She didn't tell me to quit. She didn't tell me I was bad. She didn't judge me. She didn't criticize me. She didn't condemn me. She got curious. She asked questions. And she gave me she brought science to me and podcasts to me. She's like, there's some information out there. And I've actually personally looked at my patients and the scans of their brains. Like it was like that personal testimonial of like, I've seen the science behind this firsthand. Like, let's talk about that for your life and for you and your health. And she gave me a very friendly invitation. She's like, would you consider just sampling this to see what this is like for 30 days? She didn't say, you have to quit, you have to do anything dramatic, you have to, and I'm like, I don't know, like, this is our coming together. We have cocktails and conversations. It's a thing. And she's like, I get it. And she shared her own journey of giving up wine. And I don't know that she had an alcohol use disorder, but she said, my husband and I, we traded wine for tea talks. I'm like, that sounds so lame.
You don't get buzzed off a tea.
Tea talks, cool. Let's sit there with our little I looked at my husband like,
do we have to talk with an accent, like a British accent?
Yeah, so I do this. This is at the beginning of 2025, and I'm trying to get everything under control. And that was the beginning of change. But I was also, my husband was going through his own personal development for the last few years. this is where the other linchpin is, and how good God is. God puts people in our lives for a reason. Every single person matters, and it's one person. Sometimes we're that one person in somebody's life, but it's not, oh, there's this choir of people, hallelujah, you're going to quit drinking. It's not that.
Yeah.
God will put one person at a time and just chase you down like that. And so I had this one person come into my life through a writing community, and she and her husband have just a powerful counseling firm. He's an author as well. My husband reads his book and comes to me and is like tears in his eyes, like feeling so seen by these words. Ends up going to Scotland on this trip with him. Ends up then like a group of men and such, like complete powerful thing for our entire existence together, right? And that introduced us to Dan Allender's work, which is story work. And you have a friend coming on the show who was also influenced by Dan Allender's work, right?
Who are you thinking of?
Oh gosh. I'll have to. There's
Adam
book.
Young.
Yes.
Yes, Adam Young. Yeah, Adam Young, who studied with Dan.
Yes.
Dan wrote the foreword to Adam's book. Yes, Adam Young is coming on the podcast, who has written another great book, Make Sense of Your Story. Yes.
Yes. So we dive into, Dan Allender has influenced so many people like Eldridge, and like so many people have been influenced by his story work. And it's really powerful. I start doing the story work. So at the beginning of 2025, in the midst of everything's like fast tracking to breakdown, I'm reading one of the first Christian books I've read in forever, because I basically dismissed all Christian books. Like,
why?
I'm done with people trying to tell me about Jesus and about God through their own theological lens. And I was told that you shouldn't ever read non-Christian books growing up because you could get misled. And I felt more misled and betrayed by the Christian community. I had a lot of toxic Christianity, and that's a thing. And it influenced how I raised my kids early on, and it was a very detrimental to them. Like, one will need therapy, and I own that. And it was because I was following the book. I'm really good at that. So I abandoned all of those, but I can see that my husband is influenced by our friend's book. It's called Sage. It's by Chris Bruno. It's phenomenal, especially if you're a middle-aged man. So that was a Christian book. But it's not like Christian-y type thing, right. Like it is faith-based. I imagine that's what your book is going to feel like when I read it. And I'm excited. I was like, gosh, I want to read your book. Can I just have a, copy on my Kindle or something? But
I'd send you the digital version, but it's not the updated version. You know what I mean? Like I don't even have the updated version. Like I have it in physical copy now. I finally got it, but I don't even have the most up-to-date digital version.
We'll be right back after this.
Well, Dan wrote this book called To Be Told, Co-Authoring Your Life with God. And I read it, and it's my introduction to story work. And in that process, I start to see that I had abandonment issues. So I come from, my former name is Walton. And if you know anything about the Walton TV show, you might not. But man, if you're listening and you're of a certain age, you might remember John Boy. My dad was John, literally.
Good night,
and so
Boy.
it's like, we had the image, right? And it's like, everything's great. And, I have 3 older brothers. I'm an outsider. I'm the baby, and I'm the only girl. And I was always trying to belong. And I never had that sense of belonging. I didn't have it at home. I had it with my dad. He and I were very, very close. So the one person that I had a sense of belonging with, God's like relocating him to heaven. Surprise.
Right.
But the interesting element is like everything I was doing, all my drinking, all my adulthood was all tied to belonging. I went to happy hour with the teachers because I belonged. I would hold parties and we'd like make cocktails for friends because we created belonging. And in that story work, that abandonment, the counter of the abandonment is I felt abandoned, and my desire is I want to belong and I want to feel seen.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that just for what it is. It doesn't mean I'm like, I'm not making a value statement about good, bad. It just is what it is. And the moment I accepted that and believed that, it was freedom. And I cannot explain it, John. The only explanation is God, obviously. But what's interesting to me is that all the years, the 3 years where I tried to quit and I couldn't quit, and I'd be drawn to the alcohol aisle. I'd be drawn in the store to, like, you pass by the wines. I love wine. I mean, I grew up in Cali. Like, that's like, you know, go to the wineries, stuff like delicious. And so it's like, I just couldn't help. It was a magnet. It just pulled me in every single time. But since unearthing this part of the wounded heart and this part of my story, and just giving it to God and recognizing, oh, well, my superpower is connecting people. Duh. I want to belong, and I want everyone to belong. And I can go into a grocery store now. I can go anywhere. I'm like, alcohol it's like, it doesn't exist. It's not like it does. I can't describe. The best way to describe it is like, I don't need you anymore. I belong because I belong to the Father.
Yeah.
And he's chased me down very patiently. He has whispered into my life. He has been patient. There was no judgment or criticism. Like, God has been so patient and kind. God has protected me through this journey from bad things could have happened. Like, it could have been really, really so bad. And this entire time through that journey, I was pursuing God. So that's part, where some people be like, well, if you're an alcoholic, you must be apart from God. It's like, I love God.
We've dealt with that on here.
Yeah. Like, I love God. I went to church. I'm doing all this. Like, I'm not out of alignment just because I have this idol in my life. And then it came to the final straw, which was, I'm spending money. You've spoken about this. How much money am I spending on alcohol? And what could that money be put towards? And you have a call in my life, Lord, but I am distracted. And do I want to show up to heaven and be like, I was just having a really great, glass of Old Vine Zen. It was so good. I'm sorry I couldn't do the work for you, God. I just really needed that old fashioned. I really needed, like, I started to have those conversations with God where I'm like, I want to stand before you, and I want to say I was all in. I held nothing back. I went full throttle with what you put before me. And I want that money to do something better than just serve like soothing and balm for these wounds. And so what was helpful was I started praying. I'm like, God, what would you want this money to do? Like, if I'm putting that money there, I feel like I need, like, habit replacement. I feel like I need to put that money into something else that's like beneficial. And so we actually found something that, so now it was purpose driven. It was like, okay, this is something, if I want to drink, it is now literally going to be costing something that I'm supporting and that we're leading. And it's like, there's a bigger cost there than the drinking. And so this culmination of all of it is just powerful. But I cannot tell you, I feel so free for the first time in my adult life, really, because I didn't realize how much it was holding me back, even in my early adulthood, because I was just chasing belonging.
Right. I want to go back to something you said. I'm curious, when you said, when you and I first met, that you had kind of been fighting this, what did that fight look like? Meaning what were, like, did you have moments of clarity where you were like, I am drinking too much, or was it just kind of an inner turmoil that you couldn't put your finger on? What was that kind of tension that you were feeling?
It was tension for real. Lots of inner turmoil. I have a very tender conscience, I would say. And so God just kept like drip, drip,
Yeah.
drip, drip. And I was one of those people where it's, I'm not going to drink today. As so many of your awesome guests have said this, like, you wake up the next day like, oh my gosh, I am not drinking today. I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm a big girl. I'm an adult. I'm not controlled by other things. I'm not going to drink. And running that cycle of I'm not going to drink. And then 4 in the afternoon, you're pouring a glass of wine. And it's like, I need this. I need this. I deserve this. I want this. Or my husband makes me a cocktail and it's like, oh, yeah, bummer. I'll have to drink this, even though I said that. And then spiraling down and then waking up. Like when you wake up and have those midnight conversations, I go to bed early. So midnight's like middle of the night for me, literally. So it's like if you're having those conversations with God on a regular basis, like read the room. Mm-hmm. Like I'm reading the room. Like I'm tired of having this conversation. I like outcomes and I like progression, and I'm stuck in this washing machine cycle, and I can't stand this. So it was soul crushing. It was embarrassment. It was shame. And then I would reach out for help. I did reach out, like that friend. I told my husband a few times over the years, like, I think I'm drinking too much. I think I need to stop drinking. And this is something he and I've spoken about, this year of part of abandonment is like, we can feel abandonment in so many different ways, and to reach out and say like, for me to say, I think I need help is like a really big deal. Yeah. Because I don't do that easily. Right. And then to not have help, or to have like, oh, hey, you want a cocktail? It's like, did you not just hear what I said this morning? Or did you not hear? And he wasn't, he's just being a normal person that, was just not fully present with that. And he does not have the same relationship with alcohol that I do. He has I would say like he has a healthy relationship with alcohol, and I don't. I just like drinking and drinking more and more. Like,
and so how does he still drink?
He does still drink.
And my wife does too. So it's like,
yeah. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, now I'm so excited about what I call my sober curious experiment, because that's just how I've been describing it to people, and because it's come up, and I'm like, I'm on the sober curious experiment, and I think it's really important. Am I still in denial? I am in recovery. We are all in recovery, right? We either know it or we're in denial. Yeah. I know I'm in recovery, but I don't know what labels I would slap on myself, but I do know that I want to pursue this full throttle. And I've been telling my husband, like, I just don't even see drinking ever again. For a while, it was, I might drink again in the future, but right now I need to understand what's going on under the hood, pull the masks off. Like, what is the why behind the what? Why am I doing this thing? What am I trying to escape from? Or what am I trying to resolve in my heart that is driving me towards this?
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I talked to you about meeting this guy, Justin, who's someone else I met just through talking about this. And I think Justin's going to come on the show and talk about it. But Justin and I had coffee yesterday. And what was so fascinating is, and I don't want to spoil too much because Justin will talk about this, but Justin gave up drinking for 2.5 years on a bet. Him and his buddy had a bet. And ironically, Justin's buddy lost the bet in the first 48 hours. They're like, who can go the longest without drinking? Justin's buddy, drank within 2 days. Justin went 2.5 years. Recently, now, Justin's 2.5 months sober. And I asked him this question yesterday because I said, I think there's a lot of people out there who get sober for different reasons. And I'm not saying that, like, if you need to not drink and your reason is X, Y, X, like, use X, that's fine. But if you never get to the heart of it, right? Like,
Mhm.
listen to this question that I asked Justin. I said, Justin, you were sober for 2.5 years. Now you've been sober 2.5 months. Like, did you learn anything about yourself during that 2.5 years?
Oh my gosh.
And he's like,
Yeah.
no. I said, what have you learned about yourself in this last 2.5 months when you changed the reason for giving it up? And he's like, I can't even put it, like, I can't even quantify it, right? Like, it's been hard. I'm like digging through stuff. I'm like, and I'm like, so
Yes.
a guy who gave it up for 2.5 years, right? Did not learn as much about himself as the Justin today who gave it up for 2.5 months. And I think that it's a great summation of an example of what you're saying is like, you learn when you get to the why and you uncover that. And I think, like, and I say this in the book and I stand by it. Like, there are some people who I know who have this relationship with alcohol like you and I do, and they give it up and they get to the why, and like they are able to go back and have a healthy relationship with alcohol. And I'm like, praise God for them. I can't. My sinful nature, my sinfulness, the brokenness inside of me, is just, it's there, and it's not been rooted. It will not be rooted out fully until I get to heaven. And so I can't, but I think, that's only possible, right? Like, that's only possible if you truly get to and root out the why. Like, that's the only way I think you could ever think about ever having the possibility of a healthy relationship with alcohol. And maybe I should say this. I think you and I have found a healthy relationship with alcohol.
I completely, yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, I just know that relationship means it's got boundaries, and those boundaries are the only one I can say no to is the first drink. Great. We're in a great relationship.
We have a relationship, and it's a really great relationship. If you've ever, as this year has progressed, I've thought, like, early, which made it easier for me to transition. And I love how many guests echo, you don't have to give it all up at once. And there's a process to it. And you can go through these, you don't have to go through it. I didn't have to go through a 12-step program. Like, yeah. I didn't have to do these things. And it's just so different. I was trying to think, where was I going with this? If you get sick off of something, a lot of times you have an aversion to that food. So at this point in my relationship with alcohol, where earlier this year I would have said, yeah, maybe I'll drink again. Right now, I don't want to drink.
Yeah.
That was a mean relationship. That would be like going back to an abusive ex, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to go back into that relationship. I don't want to show up. Like, you can be in the room and I can tolerate you and not have any ill will or hard feelings towards you, but I don't want to engage and so there's more work. And that to me says there's even more work because it's like a little defensive, a little protective, a little fearful. Like, whoa, you did a lot of stuff in my life and I don't want to go back to that. That's not where I want to be. And so I can be in the room with you, but I don't know that I want to like have a great conversation with you.
Right. Well, and I think, and you kind of alluded to understanding what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. And I think, what do they say, especially in that context? It's like when someone shows you who they are, believe them, right? Mm-hmm. Alcohol has showed me who it is in my life. And I finally got to the point of believing it. Like, this is who and what alcohol is in my life. And, do I have, it's interesting. It's like, do I have desire to drink again? I would say yes. And I would say sometimes it is based in, man, a good old fashioned tastes good, right? But that is like the exception. What I mostly, when I want to drink again, is life is hard. And I would do anything to just get 2 hours where I don't have to think about the shit that I feel like I'm going through. And man, alcohol is so easy and cheap way to do that. And then I remember, and I was telling someone this week, I said, you know, if I started drinking again, would I like immediately go back to the level I was? I mean, I think my history says yes, but let's just say I didn't, right? Let's just say, I mean, I drank like you. I really didn't start drinking heavy until 21. Okay, so from 21, you know, for the next 15 years, right? But only, and it was up and down for those first, like, you know, 13 and a half, you know, and there were bad periods and there was, you know, these feelings and whatnot. And it was really not until that last year and a half. So let's just even say that it takes me another 13 and a half years to get back to where I was. That last year, and like, I know I would get back and finally go back to that last year and a half. And that sucked so much from me that, like, why? Even if it took me 13 and a half years to get back to that point, it's like, why? It's just not worth it. Now that I've experienced the peace and the freedom and again, not like the quote unquote blessed life, right? Not like blessed and highly favored, you know, but the peace that comes with finally being able to face the crap in life, you know, thrust onto Jesus, you know, it's like, I just wouldn't. And so, I think that's your experience, right?
I would say that is my experience as well. And, you know, what's interesting, I think, to add into that is, like, it wasn't alcohol for so many years. It was organizing the homeschool co-op. It was organizing a prayer group. It was being so, like, we can have healthy dysfunction in our life. We can be doing really good things out of our dysfunction. And so understanding that if there is a hole, and you can't go through life without wounds, but we have to be able to address those wounds and our story so that we can show up and do things in authenticity. I know you and I both value authenticity and just transparency and vulnerability. And it's like, yeah, but what's the why behind the what? Yeah. Cool. You're in really tip-top shape. I mean, I ran a half marathon because guess what? I'd belong. I'd be part of the cool club that ran half marathons. Cool. Yay for me, right? Like, I did something that was healthy in the world's eyes. I did lots of healthy things in the world's eyes, but the why behind that what was wounded. And so that doesn't make any of it bad or wrong. I don't feel the need to do that, but it revealed in my sober experiment, right? What it's shown is, holy crap, this has been screaming at you your entire life in so many different ways. Like, but this is what it took to get me to see it. Yeah. And God is just so good. I just can't overemphasize how kind and gracious God is. My husband, he was reading a book called The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henry Nouwen. And I love reading. So he's reading it. So I picked up a copy so I could, like, he was enjoying it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read it also. And how he describes that in that relationship with God, it's like, yeah, God loves me. God loves you so much. Like, he's not mad at you. Like, and that part right there is so healing to know, like, yeah, girl, you made tough choices. And you were going all different directions to try to soothe something. And I got you. I know you did that, but it's okay. There is no shame here. There is no shame. There is no disgrace. Like, you are home now. You are here. And I love you. You belong. And those words for me, knowing that I belong, now carry so much more weight than they ever carried before.
So as we wrap up, what would you say to someone who's identifying with your story, right? And maybe it's all of it, maybe it's aspects of it. But what would you say to someone who's like, yep, Julie's my person, that's where I'm at?
Yeah, and I feel like all of your guests have been my person. I have a spreadsheet. I know you know this. I have a spreadsheet that I'm like, because I was curious. I'm like, what is it? Like, I'm getting something from everyone. You know what? I would hope that get curious. Don't. High performers, we like to be so self-critical. We have strong inner critics. We have strong drives for outcomes and for data and metrics. Just throw the spreadsheet out and don't look at how much did I drink. Don't mark the bottle. Don't try to quantify anything. Just talk with God, because God's right there and we want to turn towards God, because God is, as it says in Psalms, like, he goes before us, but I love that he's following behind us. Like, he's not, like, he's following behind you. He's following you and me. Like, that to me blows my mind. Like, so God is there. Like, just turn around and say, what's up? And just that willingness to be honest and to say, is there something more that I need to be aware of?
Yeah.
And like, it's scary to be honest sometimes, but digging into what is driving this? What is a deeper issue here? And to not be afraid. It doesn't mean that your parents are crazy, horrible, rotten people, or your sibling. It doesn't mean anybody's bad by going back to your story to understand it. But most of us have wounds from our 5, 7, 10, whatever age it was, because we could only process through the lens of that age. And now we have more about us and we have Christ with us. Like, go back and see what that story is that you've been believing this whole time, and let God heal it. Because in that healing, it heals so many other parts of life. And like, this has bled into my marriage in such a beautiful way. Like, we have what I consider a great marriage now, just by the way, since I was like, it's, like, man, we're in it to win it. And our counselor is like, you guys spend like 2 hours a day together, because we walk multiple times a day. So like, yeah, we're always having these conversations. Like just be in it to win it with yourself, with God, with the people in your close relationships.
And we'll get more into this in the podcast episode with Adam Young, but I think what you said is important, that like, and I'm getting ready to speak on this as well, and going to be reiterating this point that it's okay to admit that you were wounded in your childhood, and maybe you did have rotten parents. Like, you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, my parents were rotten. But saying that doesn't mean you had rotten parents. It doesn't detract from what they did. I said this recently, is that I know that my kids will likely need therapy, like when they get older, because I, especially as I was working through some of this stuff, like, I'm sure I was like said stuff, reacted, had, things that I didn't realize I was doing and manipulate. I don't know. And I'm like, man, I can't wait until they come to me and say, Dad, here's what happened, because I know the rupture is going to be there, right? But like, I can't repair it if I don't know about the rupture. And I think too many people are like, I don't want to know about the rupture, because that means that you're dogging on me. You think I'm a horrible person. It's like, no, we have to know about the rupture in order to get to the repair. And so I love that you said that. Julie, if people want to connect with you, I know you do some great, you do that event every year, you do coaching. Where can they go? Yeah,
you find me on LinkedIn. Go to Julie Hawley on LinkedIn. I will have a full website called therecalibration.life soon, but LinkedIn is a fantastic place, and you can see my work. And I love connecting with people. I've connected with a lot of guests from lots of different podcasts, just because if somebody is guesting, they're willing to connect. And sometimes that's the first step that we take.
And we met, just because you had the boldness to come up and say, hey. So, if someone has the boldness to connect with you on LinkedIn, you never know what God's going to do with that and what awaits. Julie, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Julie is truly special. She has been such an encouragement to me as I've gotten to know her over, I guess over the last year, I think is when we really started communicating about where she was at, and she's been such an encourager. And she really is, I would say, she does have that gift of connecting. She is that person. She's connected me with a lot of great people, and I'm just like, thank you, Lord. So I hope that her story, I hope you see yourself in her story or aspects of it. And maybe if you want to pull out a spreadsheet and make a note of where you see yourself in Julie's stories like she has done, I think that would be great. If you are encouraged by what you've heard here, I would ask that you think of one person to share this episode with. One person that you can just hit the little share button and text it to them and say, hey, I think you'd really appreciate this episode, or I think you'd really like this, or I think you'd really like that aspect. I would be so grateful. I think that is really how we grow. And when I say grow, like I don't care about numbers per se, although numbers show that just naturally that we're making the most impact. But really what I thrive on is feedback from you guys. So if you go to christianalcoholic.com, and that'll take you to my website, and there's a form that you can fill out and let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a story, how Julie's story impacted you, how all of the stories or any of the stories have impacted you. I would really appreciate that. So one person to share, and then if you reach out and let me know just what you're learning in the journey that you are on, that would be great. Please like, subscribe, and rate the show as well. It goes a long way. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. You are an encouragement to me. You are why I do what I do. I should say Jesus is why I do what I do, but you are, I want to make heaven crowded, as they say, as corny as that can sound sometimes, but that is truly my goal and my desire. As you are listening to this podcast and wrapping this up, please go to lifeaudio.com and check out some of the other podcasts available through the Life Audio Network, of which I am a part of, and I'm so grateful for their continued partnership and sponsorship. Love you all. See you next time.